The alarms blared, a deafening wail that shook me from my bunk. I stumbled into my boots, heart pounding, as the space station's emergency lights bathed everything in crimson. This is it, I thought. The day I die fixing someone else's mess. My name's Elliot, a 28-year-old nobody from a backwater town in Ohio. Now a mechanic on the Aurora, America's pride and joy orbiting 250 miles above Earth. I was nobody special, just a guy who knew how to wrench a busted coolant line or recalibrate a thruster. But that night, as I sprinted toward the maintenance bay, I saw him. Captain Adrian Marshall, all 35 years of him, standing like a damn statue in the chaos, his dark eyes scanning the crew with a calm that made my chest tighten. Our gazes locked for half a second, and I swear the universe stopped alarms. Panic. All of it. Just him and me. I shook it off and dove into the fray. A plasma conduit had blown in Sector 7, and if we didn't patch it fast, the whole station would lose oxygen. My hands moved on autopilot, tools clanging against metal, sweat stinging my eyes. Adrian's voice cut through the noise, steady and commanding. Elliot, you've got this. Keep it tight. He knew my name. My name. A nobody like me. And the captain knew it. The repair took hours, my muscles screaming as I wrestled with the conduit. Adrian stayed close, relaying orders, his presence like a gravitational pull. When the last bolt was secured and the oxygen level stabilized, the crew cheered, but I only saw him. He clapped my shoulder, his grip firm, his smile small but real. Good work, Elliot, he said, and my knees nearly buckled. I wasn't supposed to feel this way. Not about him. Not about a man. Period. Growing up in Ohio, I'd buried those thoughts deep, locked them away where they couldn't hurt me. But up here, in the endless black of space, those walls were crumbling. Every glance from Adrian chipped away at them, and I didn't know how to stop it. The next morning, I was back in the maintenance bay, elbow deep in a fried circuit board, when Adrian appeared. He leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, his uniform hugging his frame in a way that made it hard to focus. You're good at this, he said, nodding at the mess of wires. Not many could have handled last night. Just doing my job, Captain, I muttered, ducking my head to hide the heat creeping up my neck. Call me Adrian. His voice was low, almost too soft for the hum of the station. You're more than just a job, Elliot. I froze, my wrench slipping. Was he flirting? No, that was crazy. He was the captain, a decorated officer, and I was just me. But when I looked up, his eyes held something I couldn't name, something that scared me as much as it thrilled me. Over the next few weeks, Adrian found reasons to be around. He'd check on repairs, ask my opinion on systems I barely understood, or just linger while I worked. Each time, my heart raced, torn between wanting to run and wanting to stay forever. I started noticing things about him, the way his laugh lines deepened when he teased me, the way he rubbed his thumb over his knuckles when he was deep in thought. I was falling hard, and it terrified me. One night, after a long shift, I found him in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. The station was quiet, just the hum of machinery and the distant pulse of the galaxy. I hesitated, then sat beside him. Rough day? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't look at me, just kept staring at the void. Sometimes I wonder why I'm out here. Elliot. Leading. Fighting. Keeping this place together. For what? I swallowed, my throat tight. For us. For the crew. For something bigger. He turned then, his eyes searching mine. And what about you? What keeps you here? I wanted to say you. The word burned in my chest, but I couldn't get it out. Instead, I shrugged, just trying to keep this tin can flying. He laughed, soft and warm, and for a moment, the distance between us felt like nothing at all. But then his calm buzzed, and he was gone, leaving me alone with the stars and a heart I didn't know how to handle. The station never slept, but I did badly. Night after night, I'd lie in my bunk, replaying Adrian's words, his looks, the way his hand had brushed mine during a repair brief. It was stupid, dangerous even, to let myself feel this. I was a mechanic, not some lovesick kid. But every time I saw him, my resolve cracked a little more. A week after our talk on the observation deck, the Aurora hit a new crisis. A micrometeoroid had punched a hole in the outer hull, and the repair was a two-man job. Guess who got paired with me? Adrian volunteered, overriding the chief engineer's objections. I trust Elliot, he said, his voice firm, and my stomach did a flip. We suited up, tethered to the station, floating in the void. The earth hung below us, a glowing marble of blue and green. But all I could focus on was Adrian beside me. His breathing echoed in my calm, steady and sure, grounding me as we patched the hull. You ever think about going back? He asked, his voice crackling through the static. Back to Ohio. I snorted, welding a plate into place. Nothing there but bad memories and worse winters. He chuckled, the sound warm even through the calm. I meant home. Elliot, wherever that is for you. I paused, my torch hovering. Home. I hadn't thought about it in years. Guess I'm still looking, I said finally, my voice quieter than I meant. We worked in silence after that, but it wasn't awkward. It was comfortable, like we fit, out here in the nothing, just the two of us against the universe. When we finished, he grabbed my arm to steady me as we re-entered the airlock. His touch lingered, and I didn't pull away. Back inside, we stripped off our suits, sweat-soaked and exhausted. The airlock was cramped, and we were closer than we needed to be. I caught his gaze, and for a moment, I thought he might say something real. But then the hatch opened, and the moment was gone. The next day, rumors started. Whispers among the crew about the captain spending too much time with the mechanic. I overheard a tech in the mess hall. What's Marshall doing slumming it with Grease Monkey Elliot? My face burned, but I kept my head down. I didn't care what they thought. Or at least, I told myself I didn't. Adrian didn't seem to notice the gossip. Or if he did, he didn't care either. He kept finding me during my shifts, in the corridors, even in the mess hall. One night, he slid into the seat across from me, holding a tray of the station's awful synth protein. Mind if I join you? He asked, already sitting. I shrugged, poking at my food. Free station. He grinned, undeterred. You know, you're the only one here who doesn't kiss up to me. It's refreshing. I snorted. Yeah. Well, I'm not big on bowing and scraping. Good, he said, his voice low. I like that about you. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Was he doing this on purpose? Before I could respond, a calm alert blared, a system failure in the propulsion core. Adrian was on his feet in a second. All business. But as he left, he shot me a look that said this wasn't over. The propulsion issue was a nightmare. I spent 12 hours in the core, rewiring circuits and cursing under my breath. Adrian was there too, coordinating with the engineers, his voice a constant in my earpiece. When it was done, I was dead on my feet, but he pulled me aside. You need a break, he said. Observation deck. 2,200 hours. That's an order. I showed up. Because of course I did. He was already there, a silhouette against the stars. You didn't have to come, he said, not turning around. Yeah. Well, you said it was an order. I shot back, trying to keep it light. He turned, his smile soft. I'm glad you're here, Elliot. We talked for hours about the station, the crew, the lives we'd left behind. He told me about growing up in Chicago, about the pressure of being the first black captain of the Aurora, about the loneliness of command. I told him about Ohio, about the father who'd called me a disappointment, about the dreams I'd buried to survive. It was the most I'd ever told anyone, and it felt like giving him a piece of my soul. As the station's lights dimmed for the night cycle, he stepped closer. Elliot, he said, his voice barely a whisper. I don't know what this is, but I feel it too. My heart stopped. I wanted to say something, anything, but all I could do was stare. And then, before I could think, he leaned in, and his lips brushed mine. The kiss was brief, barely a second, but it burned through me like a solar flare. I pulled back, my breath ragged, my mind screaming what the hell just happened. Adrian's eyes searched mine, wide with something like fear, like he'd crossed a line he couldn't uncross. I'm sorry, he said, stepping back. I shouldn't have. No. I cut him off, my voice shaking. Don't apologize. Just give me a second. I turned to the viewport, staring at the stars to ground myself. My whole life, I'd run from these feelings I wasn't supposed to have, desires I'd been taught were wrong. But here, in the quiet of the observation deck, with Adrian's warmth still lingering, I didn't want to run anymore. I've never done this, I admitted, my voice barely audible. Not with anyone. He nodded, his expression softening. Me neither. Not like this. That surprised me. Captain Adrian Marshall, the man who could command a room with a glance, was as lost as I was. It made him feel human, reachable, dangerous. We didn't kiss again that night. Instead, we sat, talking until the station's artificial dawn crept through the viewport. He told me about his first love, a boy in high school he'd never had the courage to confess to. I told him about the nights I'd spent staring at the ceiling, hating myself for wanting what I couldn't have. It was raw, messy, and real. But reality hit hard the next day. The crew's whispers had turned into outright stares. Someone had seen us on the observation deck, not the kiss. Thank God. But enough to fuel the rumor mill. By lunch, I overheard a group of engineers joking about the captain's pet mechanic. My fists clenched, but I kept walking. Adrian didn't deserve this. Neither did I. He found me later in the maintenance bay, where I was taking apart a fuel regulator to avoid thinking. Elliot, he said, his voice low. We need to talk. I didn't look up. About what? The crew thinking I'm your side piece. He flinched, but didn't deny it. They're talking because I'm not hiding how I feel. I don't want to hide it. My wrench clattered to the floor. You're the captain, Adrian. You can't just do this. Not with me. Why not? His voice was sharp, almost angry. Because I'm your boss. Because we're both men. Or because you're scared. All of it. I snapped, finally meeting his eyes. You think this is easy for me. I'm not like you. I don't know how to be this. He stepped closer, his voice softening. I'm scared too, Elliot. But I'm not walking away. Not unless you tell me to. I wanted to tell him to go. It would have been easier, safer. But I couldn't. Instead, I grabbed his hand, my fingers trembling. Don't, I whispered. Don't walk away. That was the start of itis. Stolen moments in empty corridors, quiet talks on the observation deck, brushes of hands when no one was looking. It was terrifying and exhilarating, like free-falling in zero gravity. But the station wasn't a bubble. The crew's gossip grew louder. And soon, it wasn't just whispers. One day, Lieutenant Harris, Adrian's second-in-command, cornered me in the engine room. "You're a distraction, Elliot," she said, her voice cold. "The captain's losing focus. This station can't afford that." I bristled. "I'm just doing my job." "Are you?" She raised an eyebrow. "Keep it professional, or you'll both regret it." Her words stuck with me, gnawing at the edges of my happiness. Adrian was under pressure. Mission reports, system failures, a crew that was starting to question his judgment. I didn't want to be the reason he failed. But every time I thought about pulling back, he'd find me, and one look from him would unravel me all over again. Then came the day of the solar storm. The Aurora's shields were failing, and we had hours to reinforce them or risk catastrophic damage. I was in the shield array, rerouting power, when Adrian's voice came over the comm. "Elliot, I need you on the bridge. Now." I ran, my heart in my throat. When I got there, he was in full captain mode, barking orders. But his eyes softened when he saw me. "We're short on hands," he said. "I need you to recalibrate the shield modulators from here." It was a high-stakes job, one usually reserved for senior engineers. I hesitated, but his trust in me was unshakable. I worked fast, my fingers flying over the controls, Adrian's voice guiding me. We pulled it off, the shields holding just as the storm hit. The crew cheered, but I felt the weight of Harris's glare from across the bridge. That night, Adrian pulled me into a storage closet, of all places, and kissed me like it was the last thing he'd ever do. "You saved us today," he murmured against my lips. "No," I said, my voice thick. "You did." But even as we held each other, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were running out of time. Time became our enemy. The Aurora was a pressure cooker, every day bringing new crises: leaky oxygen tanks, failing comms, a navigation glitch that nearly sent us off course. I threw myself into my work, trying to prove I was more than the captain's pet. But the more I fixed, the more the crew watched, their judgment a constant weight. Adrian and I stole what moments we could. A brush of fingers in a crowded corridor, a shared glance during a briefing. Each one was a lifeline, but also a risk. The crew wasn't blind, and neither was command back on Earth. I overheard Harris on a secure line one day, reporting to HQ, "Captain Marshall's judgment is compromised. Personal entanglements." My stomach dropped. They were talking about us. I confronted Adrian that night in his quarters, the first time I'd ever been there. It was sparse, all function, except for a single photo of his family taped to the wall. "They're coming for you," I said, my voice low. "Harris is ratting us out." He didn't look surprised. "I know," he said, rubbing his face. "She's been gunning for my job since day one." "Then why aren't you stopping her?" I demanded. "You're the captain." "Because I'm not ashamed of this," he said, grabbing my hand. "Of us. I won't hide who I am. Elliot. Not anymore." His words hit me like a punch. I'd spent my life hiding, and here he was, ready to risk everything. I wanted to be that brave, but fear clawed at me. "What if they take your command?" I asked. "What if they send me back to Earth?" "Then we fight," he said, his eyes fierce. "Together." I kissed him then, desperate and raw, like I could hold on to him through sheer force of will. But the fear didn't go away. It grew, festering like a virus. The next crisis came faster reactor overload that could have turned the Aurora into a fireball. I was in the reactor core, suited up in a hazmat rig, when Adrian's voice crackled through my comm. "Elliot, you don't have to do this. Let the engineers. I'm already here." I cut him off, my hands steady despite the alarms screaming around me. "Trust me." I could hear the strain in his voice. "I do. Just come back to me." It took everything I had to stabilize the reactor, my suit's sensors blaring as radiation levels spiked. When I finally crawled out, shaking and soaked in sweat, Adrian was waiting. He pulled me into a hug, not caring who saw. "Don't do that again," he whispered, his voice breaking. But the crew saw. The whispers turned into a roar. By the next day, Harris had filed a formal complaint with command, accusing Adrian of favoritism and reckless leadership. I was called to a hearing, a cold, sterile video call with outside brass who looked at me like I was a bug. "Your relationship with Captain Marshall is compromising station operations," one of them said. "Do you deny it?" I wanted to scream, to tell them they didn't understand. But all I said was, "No, sir." Adrian fought for me, for us, in his own hearing. I wasn't there, but I heard he was fierce, unapologetic. It didn't matter. Command issued an ultimatum, end our relationship, or I'd be shipped back to Earth on the next shuttle. That night, I found Adrian on the observation deck, his shoulders slumped. "They're giving me a choice," he said, not looking at me. "You or the Aurora." My heart sank. "What did you tell them?" He turned, his eyes wet. "I told them I love you." The words were everything I'd wanted to hear, but they broke me. I couldn't let him lose everything for me. "You can't," I said, my voice cracking. "This station needs you. The crew needs you. And I need you," he said, stepping closer. "Elliot, you're the first thing in years that's made me feel alive." I wanted to believe him, to let myself fall completely. But the weight of his words, of what they'd cost him, was too much. I stepped back. "I can't be the reason you lose this," I said. "I won't." I walked away, my chest aching, knowing I'd just broken both our hearts. The days after were a blur of pain and routine. I threw myself into work, fixing anything that broke, avoiding Adrian's gaze in the corridors. He tried to talk to me, but I kept my distance, my heart a raw wound. The crew noticed, their whispers shifting from gossip to pity. I hated it. Command's deadline loomed 3 days until the shuttle arrived to take me back to Earth. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't think past the ache of losing him. But I told myself it was for the best. Adrian was born to lead, and I was just a mechanic who'd gotten in over his head. Then the Aurora shook. A massive explosion in the cargo bay, triggered by a faulty fuel cell. The station tilted, alarm screaming, as we lost gravity. I was in the maintenance bay when it happened, tools floating around me like shrapnel. Adrian's voice came over the comm, sharp and urgent. "Elliot, cargo bay. Now. We're venting atmosphere." I didn't think. I grabbed my gear and ran, dodging debris as the station groaned. When I reached the cargo bay, it was chaos, flames licking the walls, air hissing through a breach. Adrian was there, directing the crew, his face set with determination. Our eyes met, and for a moment, everything else fell away. "Elliot, seal that breach," he shouted, tossing me a patch kit. I worked fast, my hands steady despite the chaos. The patch held, but the fire was spreading, and we were running out of time. Adrian grabbed a suppressant canister, moving toward the flames. "Stay back," I yelled, but he didn't listen. A beam collapsed, pinning him under debris. My heart stopped. I ran to him, shoving the beam aside with strength I didn't know I had. His face was pale, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. "I'm fine," he gasped. But he wasn't. I dragged him to safety, my hands shaking as I checked his pulse. The crew rallied, putting out the fire, stabilizing the bay. Adrian was conscious but hurt, and I stayed with him until the medics arrived. "You're an idiot," I muttered, my voice thick with tears. He managed a weak smile. "Takes one to know one." In the med bay, I sat by his bed, refusing to leave. He was bruised, a broken rib, but alive. When the others left, he grabbed my hand. "Don't go to Earth," he said, his voice raw. I meant what I said. "I love you." I choked back a sob. "I love you too," I admitted, the words spilling out. "But I can't let you lose everything." "You're not," he said fiercely. "We'll figure this out. Together." I wanted to believe him, but the shuttle was coming, and command wasn't backing down. I spent the next 2 days by his side, helping with repairs, avoiding the inevitable. The crew's attitude shifted. Some looked at us with respect now, others with resentment. Harris was the loudest, her voice carrying in the mess hall. This is what happens when personal feelings trump duty. I ignored her, but her words stung. The night before the shuttle's arrival, I found Adrian in his quarters, out of the med bay, but still moving slow. "Elliot," he said, his voice steady. "I'm resigning." I stared, stunned. "You can't. This is your life." "No," he said, stepping closer. "You are." He kissed me, and this time, I didn't pull away. It was desperate, full of everything we hadn't said. But as I held him, I knew I couldn't let him do this. I had to make a choice for both of us. The shuttle was docking in 6 hours, and I was a wreck. I'd spent the night in Adrian's quarters, not sleeping, just holding him, memorizing the feel of him. But the reality of command's ultimatum hung over us like a guillotine. I couldn't let him resign. The Aurora was his purpose, his legacy. I'd be damned if I took that from him. At dawn, I slipped out, leaving him asleep. I headed to the maintenance bay, where I knew Harris would be running diagnostics. She looked up, her face hard. "Come to say goodbye?" she asked, her tone dripping with disdain. "No," I said, squaring my shoulders. "I'm taking the shuttle. But you need to back off Adrian. He's the best captain this station's ever had." She raised an eyebrow. "You think you can bargain with me?" "I'm not bargaining," I said. "I'm telling you. You want me gone. You got it. But don't punish him for this." She studied me, then nodded curtly. "Fine. You leave, and I'll drop the complaint." It was the best I could do. I spent the next few hours packing my gear, my chest tight with grief. I didn't tell Adrian to try to stop me, and I wasn't strong enough to say no. Instead, I wrote him a letter, pouring out everything, how he'd changed me, how I loved him, how I was doing this to save him. I left it in his quarters, tucked under his pillow. The shuttle bay was cold, the air heavy with the hum of machinery. The crew was there, some offering stiff nods, others avoiding my eyes. Harris stood at the back, her expression unreadable. I kept my head high, refusing to let them see me break. As the shuttle doors opened, I heard his voice. "Elliot." I turned, and there he was, running toward me, the letter crumpled in his hand. His face was raw, eyes red. "Don't do this," he said, grabbing my arm. "We can fight this. Together." I shook my head, my throat burning. "You belong here, Adrian." This station needs you. I'm just a mechanic. You're everything, he said, his voice breaking. Please. I kissed him, hard and fast, not caring who saw. I love you, I whispered. Always will. Then I turned and boarded the shuttle, my heart shattering with every step. As the doors closed, I saw him through the viewport, standing alone, his face a mask of pain. The trip to Earth was a blur. I landed in Florida, the humidity hitting me like a slap. I found a job at a repair shop, fixing cars instead of space stations. It was quiet, empty, nothing like the life I'd left behind. Every night, I stared at the stars, wondering if he was looking too. Months passed, each one heavier than the last. I kept expecting the pain to fade, but it didn't. Then, one day, a letter arrived, not digital, but actual paper, postmarked from Houston. My hands shook as I opened it. Elliot. It read, I'm coming for you. Command can't stop me. Not this time. Adrian. My heart leapt, but fear followed. What was he doing? He couldn't throw away his career. Not for me. I called the number he'd included, but it went to voicemail. I left a message. My voice unsteady. Adrian. Don't do this. You're the Aurora. Stay? He didn't listen. A week later, I got a call from an unknown number. Elliot. His voice crackled through, warm and alive. I'm in Florida. Where are you? I gave him the address of the repair shop, my voice barely steady. An hour later, a beat-up rental car pulled into the lot. And there he was, Adrian, out of uniform, in a plain t-shirt and jeans, looking more like a man than a captain. I dropped my wrench, grease-stained hands trembling, as he stepped out. He didn't say anything at first, just walked toward me, his eyes locked on mine. The other mechanic stared, but I didn't care. When he reached me, he pulled me into a hug, tight and desperate, like he was afraid I'd vanish again. You idiot, he murmured into my shoulder. You think I'd let you go that easy? I laughed, the sound choked with tears. You're the idiot. You left the Aurora. Not exactly, he said, pulling back to meet my eyes. I took a leave, convinced Command I needed time to reassess. Harris is acting captain for now. My chest tightened. You're going back. Maybe, he said, his voice soft. But not without you. We went to a diner nearby, the kind with sticky booths and coffee that tasted like motor oil. Over greasy burgers. He told me everything, how he'd fought Command's decision, how he'd spent months proving his leadership wasn't compromised, how he'd finally gotten them to agree to a temporary leave. They think I'm burned out, he said, a wry smile tugging at his lips. But I just needed to find you. I stared at my plate, my heart a mess. I left so you could keep your life, Adrian, not so you'd chase me down. My life's not on that station, he said, his voice fierce. It's with you. His words broke something in me, the last wall I'd been holding up. I reached across the table, grabbing his hand. I don't know how to do this, I admitted. I've never been this. Me neither, he said, squeezing my hand. But we'll figure it out. Together. That night, we went to my tiny apartment, a far cry from the Aurora's sleek corridors. It was messy, full of tools and takeout containers. But Adrian didn't care. We talked until dawn, about everything and nothing, our fears, our dreams, the future we hadn't dared imagine. When he kissed me, it felt like coming home. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Adrian stayed in Florida, crashing at my place, helping out at the shop. The other mechanics warmed to him, especially after he fixed a busted engine with a trick he'd learned on the station. We were careful, and public small-town Florida wasn't exactly welcoming, but in private. We were us, unguarded and real. But the Aurora loomed over us. His leave was temporary, and command was already pushing for his return. One night, as we lay in bed, the stars visible through my cracked window, he turned to me. "Come back with me," he said. "Not as a mechanic. As my partner." I froze. "Adrian, I'm not. I don't belong up there." "You do," he said, his voice steady. "You belong wherever I am." I wanted to say yes, but fear held me back. The station, the crew, the judgment, it was too much. "What about command?" I asked. "They'll never allow it." "They will," he said. "I've been working on them. Things are changing, Elliot. Slowly, but they're changing." I didn't have an answer. Not then. But the idea of going back, of being with him openly, started to take root. For the first time, I let myself hope. Hope was dangerous, but it was all I had. Adrian and I spent every moment together, building something neither of us had dared dream of a life. But the clock was ticking. His leave was ending, and the Aurora was calling him back. One evening, as we walked along a quiet beach, the Gulf of Mexico lapping at our feet, he stopped and took my hands. "Elliot," he said, his voice steady but thick with emotion, "I need you to know something. Whatever happens, wherever we end up, you're my home." I looked at him, the setting sun painting his face in gold, and I knew I couldn't let fear win. "Not this time. I'm coming with you," I said, the words spilling out before I could overthink them. "To the Aurora. As your partner." His face lit up, and he kissed me, right there on the beach, not caring who saw. It was reckless and perfect, and for the first time, I felt free. We returned to the Aurora a month later. Together. Command had grudgingly approved my return, not as a mechanic, but as a civilian consultant. A loophole Adrian had fought for. The crew was a mixed bag. Some welcomed us. Others kept their distance. Harris was colder than ever, but Adrian handled her with the same steady calm he always had. Life on the station was different this time. I wasn't just a mechanic anymore. I was Adrian's partner. Openly and unapologetically. We faced challenges, system failures, tense missions, the occasional side-eye from a crew member, but we faced them together. Every night, we'd sit on the observation deck, the stars stretching out before us. And I'd remember that first moment our eyes met. One day, as we worked side by side on a routine maintenance check, Adrian turned to me, his smile soft. "You know," he said, "I was just a captain on this station, but I loved you from the moment our eyes met." I laughed, nudging his shoulder. "Cheesy, Captain." "True, though," he said, pulling me close. And it was. Against all odds, through crises and judgment, we'd found each other. The Aurora was our home, not because of its walls or its mission, but because we were together. In the vastness of space, we'd carved out something small, human, and real, a love that burned brighter than the stars.